she'll listen closely. When darkness wraps the world and dreams begin to stir, you've arrived at the right place. Welcome to Between Dreams and Shadows, the sanctuary of stories that live between sleep and the unknown. Here, every tale is more than a story. It's a portal to hidden worlds, forgotten secrets, whispers from beyond, and shadows that speak as your eyes begin to close. If you're drawn to mysteries, haunting legends, and stories that send shivers down your spine, this channel is your new nighttime ritual. Before we begin, I invite you to become part of this growing nightbound community. Subscribe now and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a tale. New stories drop regularly, always under the veil of night. Like this video if you enjoy that chill before sleep. It helps this channel grow and lets me bring you deeper, darker stories. Drop a comment below. Have you ever had a strange dream or felt something watching in the dark? Your experience might inspire the next tale now. Take a deep breath, turn off the lights, leave the world behind, and get ready to drift between dreams and shadows. Setting the atmosphere. Never used to be afraid of the dark. In fact, I preferred it. It was quieter than the day, cooler, too soft and comforting, like a blanket no one could see. But that was before I noticed the shadows moving when I breathed. It began on a Tuesday. I remember because I had stayed late at work, missed dinner, and collapsed into bed without turning on the overhead light. My room was exactly as I'd left it. Bed near the window, nightstand with my old lamp and books, and that stupid chair in the corner I kept forgetting to move. The moonlight spilled through the blinds like silver smoke, casting long broken stripes across the walls and floor. It was quiet, the kind of quiet where you can hear your own heartbeat. I lay there, half asleep, staring at the ceiling, and then I blinked. That's when I saw it. The shadow of the chair wide slanted twitched, not swayed like something brushing. It, not flickered like passing headlights. It twitched like something had jerked it a fraction of an inch. Only, the chair didn't move. I sat up, slowly, brushing my hands over the sheets, watching the room with a new kind of stillness. My breath was shallow, not out of fear but confusion. The shadows, those dull familiar shapes, looked different now. They shifted with the breeze, yes, but also. When I exhaled, I held my breath. The lines on the floor stopped swaying. Everything became still. I let out a slow, controlled breath, and the shadow of the chair leaned toward me. I turned on the lamp. Nothing. The chair was there, exactly where I'd left it. But something small had changed in my perception of the room. The silence now felt too quiet, as though something unseen was holding its breath with me. That night, I left the lamp on. It's strange, isn't it? How a single breath can feel like an invitation, an offer, a signal, as if something was listening in the dark, waiting for the right rhythm, the right pattern, the right person to notice. And unfortunately, I noticed the first signs of disturbance. The next night, I told myself I was being paranoid. Sleep deprivation can cause all sorts of weird perceptions. Shadows twist. Sounds distort. Your mind fills in blanks where none exists. That's what I repeated as I crawled into bed, leaving the lamp off this time, half to test myself, half to prove the world was still logical. The moonlight returned, as it always did. Soft and indifferent. I lay motionless, eyes open, breathing. Slowly, nothing stirred. Nothing moved, until I blinked. The bookshelf.k shadow now reached halfway across the floor, stretching like a hand across the rug. I hadn't moved a shelf. I hadn't changed the angle of the blinds. But the shadow was different. Longer. I sat up quickly, this time not switching on the lamp. Instead, I watched. Every time I exhaled, the shadows across the room shimmered only slightly, almost like heat rising off pavement. But they didn't return to their original positions. No. They crawled, subtly, fraction by fraction, toward the bed. I inhaled deeply. Nothing. I exhaled. The shadows crept closer. My heart began to race, not out of fear, not yet, but out of a strange fascination. I tried a shallow breath, a quick exhale, a sigh. Each had a different effect. Some made the shadows lean forward, others made them withdraw, and just one made the shadow from the chair rise higher on the wall, stretching vertically, as if it were standing. That's when I whispered, out loud, to no one in particular, "Is someone there?" The shadows froze. Not a twitch, not a flicker. They simply held their shape, as if waiting for the next breath to decide their form. I forced myself to stand, legs weak, crossed the room, and turned the lamp on. Warm light filled the space. Everything returned to normal. Chair, bookshelf, window, me. But something was off again. A book had fallen from the shelf. One I hadn't touched in months. It lay open on the floor, pages crinkled like it had been yanked, not dropped. I picked it up. A short breath escaped my mouth. The overhead bulb flickered. My skin crawled. Whatever this was, it responded to more than just shadows. It was listening, learning, matching me breath for breath, thought for thought, and I was starting to wonder if the darkness had begun watching me back. The sound, that shouldn't exist, stopped breathing just to test it. Standing still in the center of the room, I held the air in my lungs until it burned. The shadows didn't move. The air remained heavy, expectant, as if the room itself was leaning in, listening for a signal. Then, I exhaled. A sound followed, not loud, not sudden, just wrong. It came from the corner near the chair, a faint clicking, like fingernails tapping. Wood, but muffled, distant, as if echoing up through the floorboards. I froze, straining to hear more, but nothing came until I breathed again. Click dash, click. Faint, deliberate. I turned my head slowly, scanning the room. My pulse throbbed in my ears, but I could still hear it, that low, curious whisper, crawling along the floor like mist. It wasn't words, not exactly, more like the shape of words that hadn't decided what they wanted to be. I whispered, "Hello, A." Pause. Then the sound changed closer, sharper now, a hiss of air, almost like someone shushing from across the room, but no one was there. My curtains shifted slightly, even though the window was closed. The whispers weren't responding to speech, they were responding to breath. I closed my mouth, breathing carefully through my nose. Still, the sounds came. The faint hiss, now forming delicate, unintelligible phrases that tickled the back of my mind. I couldn't make out what they said, but the cadence was unmistakable human. Not a random house creak, not a pipe. Something was forming language. In the dark, I grabbed my phone, hit record, and slowly turned in a circle. "Just need to prove it," I whispered. That's when I heard it clear as day, in the dead silence of my room, still awake. I spun around. Nothing there. Just shadows frozen in their unnatural postures. But now I felt it, not fear. Not yet. Something worse. Recognition. The room knew I was listening. I pressed stop on the recording and hit play. Static. Silence. My own whisper. But the voice still awake was gone. My breath quickened, and with it, the shadows began to move again, like something had learned the rhythm of my lungs, and it was sinking to me. I slept with the lights on again, this time hugging the edge of the bed, eyes open until dawn. But that voice haunted the silence between every blink. Still awake, still awake, still waiting. The presence without a face by the fourth night. I was no longer questioning what I saw. The logical explanations had crumbled, like dried leaves. It wasn't just the shadows. Not anymore. There was something here, not imagined, not symbolic, something real. And it didn't care if I believed in it. That night I tried something different. I left the lights off, but positioned a flashlight on the dresser, angled toward the center of the room. A test. I wanted to control the shadows this time, to see if the light could pin them down like insects. I took my place on the bed, set my breathing slow and steady, and waited. The shadows behaved at first. They lay flat under the beam, still and ordinary. But as the hour crept past midnight, a draft swept through the room. Not from the window, from under the bed. Cold, damp, intentional. I didn't move. The air thickened, as if something exhaled directly beneath me. Then click, the flashlight flickered. The shadows danced, and in that moment, I felt eyes on me. Not imagined. Not metaphorical. Like someone was crouching just behind my peripheral vision, smiling. I sat up slowly, my spine stiff with dread. The flashlight steadied. Shadows snapped back into place. But my pillow was dented as if someone had been sitting beside me just seconds ago. I reached out with a trembling hand and touched the fabric. Still warm, I whispered, "Who are you?" No answer. Instead, something shifted across the dresser. A pen rolled toward the edge, on its own, touched nothing, yet moved. It stopped at the very edge, balanced, like it had been placed there by careful fingers. I stood and backed away, staring at the pen, my breath shallow now. The flashlight dimmed again. In that fragile dimness, I saw it not clearly, not directly, but enough. A void, a humanoid emptiness at the far end of the room. Not black, not even dark. Just the absence of everything else. A hole in reality shaped like a person, faceless, formless but undeniably watching. It didn't move. It didn't need to. Its presence soaked into the walls, into my skin, into my breath. I shut my eyes tight, counted slowly, inhaled, exhaled. When I opened them, again it was gone. But the room had changed. Subtly, permanently. The chair had turned. Not much. Just a few degrees. Now it faced the bed. That was when I understood. I wasn't being haunted. I was being studied. And isolation. It didn't mean I was alone. It only meant there was no one left to help. The unspoken warning. I began noticing a pattern. The disturbances weren't random. They followed a rhythm, like a pulse. Not mine dash, its dot. Every night, around 3:17 a.m., something changed. Subtle, at first. The air would still. The silence would stretch thin like a drawn curtain. My breath would hitch for no reason at all. And then, always, a shift in the shadows. At exactly 3:17, the pen would roll. The chair would creak. A whisper would drift through the room, not from the walls, but from within the room itself, as though the space remembered being inhabited. But this night was different. I sat up before the hour struck, watching, waiting, as the clock ticked over to 3:17. The flashlight, still propped carefully on the dresser, turned off by itself. No flicker, no warning, just dark. I didn't move. I didn't speak, and yet the whisper came anyway. Don't. That one word, soft, hollow, delivered not as a threat, but as a warning. Don't. What? I whispered back. Silence. Then a creak from the ceiling above me. Not the roof, not the attic. From the air above my bed, like someone had shifted their weight on a platform that shouldn't exist. I slowly looked up. Nothing there. Just the dark. But I felt it. The weight of a presence pressing downward, as if something was hunched over me in the dark, just inches from my face, breathless. Then tap, a sound near the wall. I turned and saw it. A shape traced into the condensation on the window pane. A perfect circle, drawn with a finger. I hadn't opened the window. I hadn't breathed on the glass. It was left for me. I stepped closer, heart pounding. The circle wasn't alone. Within it, a slash, then another. 3 marks, carved like an ancient symbol or warning. Deliberate, precise. I stood there, breath fogging the glass beneath it, and as I exhaled, I noticed something else. Wherever my breath touched the pane, the symbol repelled the mist. The marks stayed clear, like the glass remembered them before I had arrived. I backed away slowly, watching the symbol stare at me like an open eye. That's when I understood. The phenomenon wasn't just following me. It wasn't haunting me out of malice or hunger. It was trying to warn me. Something else was coming. Something deeper than shadows. And this was just the invitation. The room fell silent again. But this time, I felt no safety in it. Only the sense that silence was a message I had failed to decode. The moment of truth. I stopped sleeping altogether. Each night I sat awake, flashlight by my side, notebook in hand, documenting every noise, every movement, every unnatural breath the room seemed to take on my behalf. The symbol on the window hadn't faded. Every morning, no matter how warm the sun grew, it remained etched in the glass and touched, like it didn't exist in this world's temperature or time. It had become a part of the room now, like the shadows, like the chair, like it. I had two choices, retreat or confront. So, I decided, I would face it. I would ask the questions that clawed at my sanity, not as a victim, but as something closer to an invited guest. That night, I turned off every light, sat cross-legged on the floor, waited my breath calm, my eyes adjusting to the thickening dark. 3:16 a.m., 1 minute to go. I whispered into the air, "I know you're there." No response. 3:17 a.m. The chair moved, not by inches. It rotated slowly, precisely, until it faced me directly. Then silence again. I inhaled. The shadows leaned forward. I exhaled, and the void returned the same faceless figure I'd seen before. But this time, it was closer. Not across the room, not at the edge of my vision. It stood inches away, just beside the chair. Still no face, no form, just emptiness, shaped like a person wearing space itself like a coat. And yet, I could feel it studying me. Not with eyes, but with awareness. I whispered, "Why me?" The void twitched. Behind it, on the wall, my own shadow, twitched too, but not in sync. Not as a reflection. My shadow stepped away from me. It moved independently, stretching toward the figure, mirroring its form, becoming part of it like it had been waiting all along to return to where it belonged. I froze. The air thickened. A sound rose barely. Audible breathing. Not mine. Slow. Ragged. Inhales drawn through something that didn't have lungs. Exhales that made the window fog from across the room. Then I understood. It had never followed me. It had been inside me, breathing with me, learning through me. I looked down at my hands. They were trembling, but not in fear. In sync, every movement I made. It echoed. Every breath I took. It matched. Every thought I resisted. It knew. And in the silence that followed, I realized something terrifying. This was never about shadows, or sounds, or objects. It was about becoming, and I was no longer sure where it ended, and where I began. The inevitability of darkness, I stopped fighting it. The more I tried to escape the presence, the closer it drew, like a reflection in water unreachable, yet tethered to every move I made. The chair stayed turned toward me now, day and night, as if awaiting my return. The mark on the window pane never left, and my shadow, it no longer waited to be summoned. It moved on its own. I would catch it flinching, just out of sync with me, lagging a half-second behind, then snapping forward to match again, like it forgot who was supposed to lead. One night, I tested it. I raised my hand slowly, deliberately. My shadow did the same. Then I whispered, "Don't." And it stopped, mid-air, arm raised, frozen, while mine continued. That was when the truth cracked open fully, silently, like an egg full of black yolk. The thing in my room wasn't haunting me. It was preparing me. At 3:17 a.m., I sat in the chair. My chair, I faced the bed, now cold and uninviting. I didn't need to lie there anymore. I no longer slept. I waited. The air shifted again, familiar now, heavy with breath that wasn't mine, and the figure appeared. Not distant this time, not veiled in darkness. It stepped into the faint light from the hallway, bold, present, real. But it had my shape, exactly. Height, shoulders, movement, no face, just the impression of one. It moved to the bed, sat where I used to sleep, then looked at me. No mouth, yet I heard it clearly, not out loud, but inside me, as if I'd spoken to myself. "You're ready?" I didn't respond. I didn't need to, because it was right. The nights had hollowed me out. I no longer feared what watched from the corners. I no longer blinked when the walls sighed. I no longer questioned which breath was mine and which belonged to something older than my voice. The shadows moved when I breathed, but now I moved when they did. I stood, the figure mirrored me, and just for a moment, I could no longer tell which of us had risen first. The light in the hallway flickered, then died. I didn't move. The room inhaled. I exhaled, and the dark welcomed me. The fear that stays. It's been 3 nights since I left the bed. 3 nights since I began sleeping with my eyes open, not metaphorically. I sit in the chair now. Always. The bed is no longer mine. I watch it like one might watch a grave that's never been dug. But already claimed. The figure doesn't visit anymore, because it doesn't have to. The house is quieter now, but it's not. Peace sets the hush that comes after something has changed. The kind of silence that knows too much. Sometimes, in the dead stillness of the night, I feel movement. Not the chair, not the shadows. Me. I'll see my own arms move before I remember telling them to. I'll hear myself breathe at a rhythm that doesn't feel like mine. I'll feel the weight of my own head tilt to listen to something I didn't hear. Something deep inside the walls. Or maybe deeper. The whispers have stopped, but the feeling has not. I don't think they need to whisper anymore. The message is inside me now. Carved not in words, but in instinct. Like an itch in the spine. Like a memory I never made, but can't forget. This isn't haunting. This is occupation. I leave the house sometimes, but it follows. Not the figure, not the shadow, the sensation, the calm, low hum of breath behind breath, the twitch of movement that I can't trace, the knowing that fear no longer needs footsteps, has learned to sit quietly, inside. And the worst part, sometimes I look in mirrors and expect not to see myself. Sometimes I don't. Only shadows. Sitting, waiting, I used to wonder what it wanted. Now, I wonder what I've become. And in the moments, just before sleep, when I feel the boundaries between thoughts and whispers begin to blur, I remember that first voice, the one that started it all, still awake. Yes, I am. But I'm no longer sure who else is. 2. Could you sleep after hearing this? What do you think really happened in that room? Let me know your thoughts in the comments and, if you dare, explore another tale before bed. The shadows are always waiting.